So I was sleeping outside because I was but I was with Cat and Cat said everything. She said, it's from the host computer.
What's that? Oh, we're
about applications, how to get summer jobs. And none of these programs could have happened without the teachers. And I just specifically have to call out Lainey Cahill, Michelle Decio, Melissa Calendarian, Julia Mitchell, Matt McKenna, who ran the elementary program for us, and then Ami Sanye at the high school, who coordinated the high school program with support from Joel Menasha and David Perez. And then we had 2 EL in-class tutors, aides, who were doing family outreach, calling students when they weren't coming to the program. And that was Mona Masawi and Sabrina Pinto. And they worked in the classrooms with the students as well, in addition to helping, keep the program going. With regards to other updates, we hired 6 new staff members in the EL department this year. We had 3 retirements, which I'll be talking to Susie about later because I'd like to acknowledge them. And then we also had 2 resignations. So we have 6 new staff members, basically K through 12. We're entering year 2 of the change to the Missatuck for grades 1 through 4 newcomers, and 5th grade newcomers at the McGlynn Elementary School. And then we continue our Leslie University partnership. This year we have 2 full year interns working in the newcomer classrooms at the Missatuck. And then at the McGlynn Middle School, we're continuing with our co-teaching for math and science. We're going back to our pre-pandemic model where the students are actually part of the classroom and the teachers are co-teaching, and we'll continue with that professional development because we do have some changes at the middle school with staffing. So we want to make sure everyone's on the same page and continuing that professional development. And then we're going to be looking at our K through 12 curriculum, doing some updates. We're going to be in the process of putting together a team to develop a writer's workshop program, because when we do the analysis of the access test, writing is typically the last domain to develop, and we're looking for ways to strengthen that to increase our writing scores. And then last year you approved the funding through the ESSER funds to continue with the Imagine Learning, and we're in the process of onboarding that.
Great, thank you, Mr. Texera. Member McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Teixeira. Always good to see you and hear about your program. Can you just for the community and myself as well, EEUI?
So it's the Early Elementary Urban Education Initiative through Leslie University.
Okay.
So teachers, teacher candidates they're in an accelerated 1-year master's program that will enable them to get their 1 through 6 Gen Ed certification with an add-on EL license.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
And then is there, how many, I'm really happy to hear about the in-class tutor and aides that we're doing, the family and community engagement and outreach to the community members. And has there been much progress on the LPAC?
No, because last year everything was tabled.
Just with the pandemic, right?
Because of the pandemic. And I don't have my calendar with me, but we have a target date for another DLAC meeting. I think it's in November. So the plan is for that to have teachers work at their building level to do, we always, when we come back to school, we'll do family information nights at the school level. And it's just to help, parents, caregivers, navigate the back to school piece, how to use the website, how to email their teacher, and then we'll use that as a recruitment tool for the DLAC.
And can you, again, with the acronym, let us know what the DLAC stands for?
District English Learner Advisory Council.
Thank you. And then for the curriculum, is there a name for the K-12 EL curriculum and pacing guides?
No, it's just the EL curriculum. We
Creative.
follow the
Frameworks.
well, they're not frameworks. They're the English language proficiency benchmarks and
Mhm.
outcomes.
So-
And so our curriculum is based on that. And then the WIDA standards are folded into that because the WIDA standards focus on listening, reading, writing, and speaking.
Right, so it's not a purchase curriculum, it's a curriculum that you folks form based on those
Yeah,
standards
so
and
it's
the
our own
frameworks.
curriculum that incorporates, so for the English piece, it incorporates the English language arts standards, the Common Core standards. We bring in the English language development through the English language proficiency standards, and then the WIDA standards are a part of that as well.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Thank you, this is great. Congratulations on your successful summer program. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have number 5, adaptive physical education programming, Director of Pupil Services, Supervisor of Health and Physical Education, and a certified adaptive physical education programming teacher will report on the initiation of adaptive PE programming in the 21-22 school year and the district's plans for additional adaptive PE programming in the years ahead.
Good
Welcome.
evening. Before we start the presentation, we just wanted to thank the committee for having this position in the budget this year. Carla has been doing a lot of work. So Carla Andre is our first AP teacher in Medford Public Schools. We're very excited to have her. And she has been working hard all summer, and I think even before this summer, because this has always been a goal of hers to have this program here in Medford. So Carla's going to present, and then we will be here for any questions that you may have.
Great.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. As Joan said, my name is Carla Andre, and I'm the adapted physical education teacher in Medford. Prior to this new role, I taught in the high school in the Access program for the past 5 years. Tonight, I'm going to take about 10 to 15 minutes of your time and just kind of detail what exactly adapted physical education is and how we determine eligibility, who is eligible, and what this means for students who require it. I'm also going to talk a little bit with Rachel about unified sports in Medford and how adapted physical education will kind of tie into that and where we are in the process just 3.5 weeks into the school year. So to start, adapted or adaptive physical education, the term is really kind of interchangeable. You'll see it listed differently depending on what district it's in. Adaptive is a word we say to describe behavior, and adapted is the act of modifying something, in this case, the curriculum, APE for short, to make it easier. Physical education is a direct mandated subject, just like ELA or math. Students have to have it throughout their time here in Medford Public Schools. Students who have a disability will qualify for eligibility determination. Adaptive physical education meets the needs of students with disabilities. There are 14 categories of disability in which a student can qualify for APE. So a student must meet one or more of the listed disabilities that you see here, and that's according to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. In other words, the student already has an IEP established. If they have an established disability, then they would be eligible for this service. Students on a 504 can also qualify. AP is determined with the use of formal assessments, and if a student is not safely or successfully accessing the curriculum. So right now in Medford, we have a list of students who have been referred. They've been referred by program teachers, physical education teachers, and related service providers. So I'm going to kind of walk you through, I guess, the eligibility process in Medford and what we're doing right now. So I'll get a list of the referrals, and I'm going to go into each school, which I have been doing, cross-checking if they're eligible. So if they have a disability and determine eligibility, I'll conduct a formal observation. After the observation is conducted, the educational team leaders will reach out to parents for consent to formally evaluate. I'll be using an assessment tool and go in and do that formal assessment and then determine if the student is eligible. If the student is eligible for this service, then it will go into a student's IEP. So what does that look like for students? So it, just like anything else with special ed, it's really individualized based on the student needs. So I think the majority of what I'm seeing across the district will be supplemental PE. So, and I mentioned this again in a couple of slides, but we're not replacing inclusion. So we're not replacing students who are able to access general physical education. We're not going to pull them out. So this will be supplemental to that. I think it's really, I do think physical education is kind of an easy way to include students. But APE will really kind of make sure the student is getting the most out of this subject. So sorry, you can stay here, but it'll be a combination of small group supplemental. It could be individualized one-to-one objectives. It could be a push-in model. So it's really gonna vary depending on what the student need is. So this is just a visual. This is just how I like to look at it. At the bottom, you'll see general physical education. We're gonna have the bulk of our students in that green area. And then as you go up the pyramid, the smallest piece there would be a separate APE class. So we're looking at a really small number of students that would have only APE with no other general phys ed. So you're looking at that sub-separate being really the smallest. This is just a visual. I'm not going to go through every single example, but it's just examples of kind of made up students with disabilities and where they might fall. So if you keep clicking through, you know, based on their description, they'll fall into a category here on these circles. So whether it's general PE mixed in with supplemental APE, it could be an APE class mixed in with that one-to-one kind of pull out, or you know, a combination of the three in some cases. Yeah, you can just quickly, there you go. Okay, and so this slide I just added, you know, I don't have to go into detail about this, but a lot of, you know, a question I've been asked is, what is the difference between physical therapy? Oh, did I go ahead one? Oh, I went ahead one. So Fape and least restrictive environment. So as I mentioned, we're not replacing it, we're supplementing it. So so if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to actually mention unified sports. Perfect. This year, we're fortunate enough to have unified sports at the high school level. This is going to be a team for students of all abilities, and it gives students with disabilities the opportunity to safely participate in after-school athletics in a comfortable and safe environment. This isn't to say that students with disabilities cannot participate in typical athletics, but it's a program that is really intentionally designed to create that meaningful inclusion that we've talked so much about. So I mentioned Common Ground, or some of you might know that I've been involved in Common Ground, which was the topic of our subcommittee, our special ed subcommittee that Melanie kind of led. So the future of adapted physical education, my hope, and I mean, this is something in the future of what kind of the long-term vision is for me and for us, is that I think it has a lot of potential for that meaningful reverse inclusion. It's my hope that eventually we'll have a unified PE class in which students at the middle school and high school level elect to take a physical education class with students of diverse abilities or all abilities. And then it really intentionally creates, you know, that meaningful inclusion. And so I guess, you know, overall, the overarching idea of this is that we're not pulling students out of a general physical education class. This is supplemental. This is something that students do require as a mandated subject. So we don't have to show the last couple of slides. So I'll take any questions, and Joan and Rachel and I can answer them if you guys have any.
Thank you, thank you. May I ask a question? Oh, I didn't see any hands. Member McLaughlin?
You can, I defer to you, Mayor, if you want to go first, and then
thanks.
I'll go after the mayor.
From the chair, I just had the question of, you're starting the program, so how do you handle, do you go to every school during the day?
Yep.
Or what's your schedule like? And
yeah,
how many
logistically,
students do you service
so
right now?
Right now, since we have never had it in Medford, we're working on building up the program. We didn't have it, so it wasn't already on students' IEPs in Medford. There might be situations where it was on a student's IEP. Maybe that student came from out of district or was returning from an outplacement. So that's what I looked at first. After that, I got referrals just from PE teachers, from program teachers. I would say my referral list is about 70 right now, 75. That doesn't mean that every student who has a disability requires this. You do need to have a disability to be eligible, but it does not mean if you have one, you definitely will require this. So it's important once I get the referral. So I've been going into every school and observing these students in their PE class, in some cases at recess. So that was where I started. So I'm doing formal observations now. And then once those are complete, we'll have the assessment ready to go, and we'll get consent to evaluate.
Thank you. Member McLaughlin?
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation.
Mr. McLaughlin, if you could turn member.
Yep, now it's
Okay,
on.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Andre, for this information. Medford's lucky to have you. And I would ask specifically, I felt like the previous graphic with the different levels of modifications, accommodations, and specialized instruction for AP was a little, I was concerned about the top graphic where it was strictly AP. Do I understand correctly that AP does not meet the requirements, or it does meet the requirements for phys ed?
It does meet the requirement for phys ed. Yeah, that's just a visual to kind of show that, as students kind of think of it like a sub-separate classroom.
Right.
So you probably have the smallest amount of our population in those sub-separate classrooms, and we try to keep the inclusion as much as possible through co-taught, through a small group, or whatever it might be. So that's just a visual to show that there might be a few students who cannot participate in general phys ed for whatever reason, but that would be our smallest population.
Right. And just for Fape and the least restrictive environment. So Fape, is the free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment when supports and services are, when a disability prevents from otherwise. But one of the concerns I know the previous director had around APE was that we were going to be creating a substantially separate program for kids with disabilities. And obviously that's not what we want to do.
No.
We want meaningful inclusion. And I hear you saying that, but I just also want to bring it to the committee's attention and to the community's attention that this is not what we want to do. We are not looking to further segregate,
Right.
especially in opportunities when there are ways to meaningfully include our children. We're really looking about accessibility. And so as somebody was sharing with me at a point when we did not want to participate in sort of adaptive programs because we wanted full inclusion, they were saying that adaptive programs help the child access, or the student access, the full inclusion at some point. So it's a scaffolding and a support, but it's not meant to substitute. Right.
Correct.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that for the community as well. Thank you. I'm excited about this
Yeah.
program, and we're looking forward to your.
Yes. Maybe an update in a couple months
Yeah.
after you've done your evaluations. That'll be great. Member Van de Kloot?
Yeah, I just want to add, this is really exciting. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. If we could move to take item number 1 off the table now that Superintendent Edward Vincent has audio. By member McLaughlin, seconded by member Rousseau. All those in favor? All those opposed? Paper passes. Number 1, opening of school. The superintendent will report on the achievements and challenges of the opening of the 2021-2022 school year. Dr. Edward Vincent.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, just confirming on my end here. Glad to be back. Before I begin my remarks, I wanted to just open with acknowledging and welcoming our new administrators this year. And the new administrators that have joined the team this year, we have Miss Nicole Sanford, who is one of our new assistant principals at the high school complex. We have Miss Farah Lally, who is a new assistant principal at the Andrews Middle School. We have Miss Kim Clinton, who is a coordinator of special education at the high school. We have Miss Carmen Williams, who is our new superintendent resident in training this year. And last but not least, I also just wanted to formally recognize Miss Avery Hines, who's our director of health services, and Nurse Tony Ray and I, because of the audio challenges, Nurse Tony Ray also wanted to just share a few remarks about Miss Avery joining the team. So, Miss Ray.
Good evening, Mayor, school committee members, superintendent, and assistant superintendents. I just wanted to wholeheartedly endorse Miss Avery Hines as the Director for Health Services. Ms. Hines brings a passion and a big picture vision to school for her practice as a school nurse. She always puts students at the forefront of her discussions and decisions and planning. And I think that's the most important quality that she brings to this role. So I'd like to wish her congratulations. And I think all of you will enjoy working with Ms. Hines. So congratulations, Avery.
Congratulations to all the administrators. Thank you, Nurse Tony Ray, for your comments. I also just had very few brief remarks. I want to share the great news that this past Friday, our Mustang football team won their home opener 28-22 over Cambridge. And there is a wonderful video clip that we will try to share with the entire community at large in this week's communication. But from all of the feedback, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. The band played, the cheerleaders were there, our team played well, fans cheering them on, and it was just a wonderful experience to celebrate our young sport athletes. So I was very happy about that wonderful news. I also wanted to share with the committee that this week, both the Andrews and McGlynn middle schools will be participating in the Sandy Hook Promise initiatives. Start with Hello Week. It's a week that schools all over the country are taking part in to engage students in these three pillars. Number one, empathy building. Number two, reducing social isolation. And number three, creating an inclusive school community. Each day, an activity will be done in homeroom classes. And this week, homeroom has been extended to accommodate this important program. I also want to just take this moment to really extend a huge thank you to our business community partners for their overwhelming generosity to our students here in Medford. Each of them that I'm going to list shortly has provided much needed supplies for students in grades K through 12, as well as to the Medford Family Network students and our students who attend the Malden Y at 30 Forest Street. So I want to thank Member Plus Credit Union. They donated 100 full backpacks. I'd like to thank Wegmans. They donated 180 packets of supplies for middle and high school students. I'd like to thank Comcast. They donated 180 notebooks for middle and high school students. I'd like to thank Brookline Bank for their donation of highlighters for our students, and Stop and Shop for their donation of hand sanitizer to our buildings. Additionally, I would like to thank Cheryl Rodriguez and the general public for their numerous donations of school supplies that were dropped off at City Hall, as well as thanking Mayor Lungo-Kern for distributing pencils and hand sanitizer to our schools. Again, working together, the Medford Public Schools greatly appreciates the teamwork and the collaboration of our community. This week, we also have several back to school nights for parents and caregivers to meet with your students' teachers. These are in-person events. The Andrews Middle School hosted their back to school event last Thursday, and the remaining schedule is as follows. The Missatuck will be Tuesday, the 21st, tomorrow. The McGlynn Elementary and Brooks Elementary will be on the 22nd, Wednesday. McGlynn Middle School will be on September 23rd, Roberts Elementary School, September 27th, and the high school on September 30th. So this Sunday, please mark your calendars, September 25th, the Medford Family Network will host their clothing and book swap from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the West Courtyard of Medford High School. Appointments are necessary, So for further information, please call the Medford Family Network at 781-393-2106. I'd also like to thank Counselor Falco for donating supplies and gift cards to the Medford Family Network. I'd like to thank our CCSR students who worked collaboratively with Mr. Maury Carroll of Carroll's Restaurant, providing coffee and pastry for all of our first responders, Medford Fire, Medford Police, and Armstrong Ambulance on both Saturday, September 11th and Sunday, September 12th, in honor of the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks that took place in New York. So I want to say thank you again to the community for their generosity. It is greatly appreciated. Lastly, I just want to share that starting last week on September 15th until October 15th, we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month as we recognize the achievements and contributions of Hispanic Americans who have inspired others to achieve success, as well as pay tribute to the generations of Hispanic Americans who have positively influenced and enriched our nation and society. Thank you, everyone. Those are my remarks for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Edward Vincent. Glad you're back with us.
Thank you.
Number 8, we have virtual network infrastructure repair and replacement request. Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations will report on an urgent technology infrastructure repair project, specifically the replacement of the network unified storage devices that are critical for the continued viability of storage, archiving, and disaster recovery capabilities for the Medford Public Schools virtual network. The administration will be requesting authorization for the expenditure not to exceed $190,000 of the previously appropriated capital improvement funding. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mayor. The committee received a memo over the course of the weekend that we've reached a place of urgency with respect to the infrastructure that supports our virtual environment. This is infrastructure that was procured a decade ago that had a shelf life of much shorter than a decade. Generally speaking, we think of this as infrastructure that would last approximately 5 years. We did have some warranty extensions that, as I understand it, were obtained in the course of the last 10 years. But the hardware has essentially worn out. And with the warranties having expired, we're in a position of significant risk, which sort of came into sharp relief to us during a planned power outage on August 20th, where the district was repairing an electrical transformer at the high school, requiring us to evacuate a planned evacuation of the building at the end of the day on a Friday. And when we went to turn the power back on that weekend, it became apparent to our IT staff and the engineers who were on site in anticipation of these types of challenges that it wasn't clear that the virtual network was going to come back with the speed and efficiency that we needed it to, or I guess come back at all. And at that point, we determined that we would have to identify this as our first capital priority of the new school year. And we would ask for your blessing to use the part of the capital improvement funding that was allocated approximately 1 year ago to put toward this project. I know that we've had discussions in this forum and at the subcommittee level about a variety of capital improvement projects, and you'll be hearing much more about those in the coming weeks and months. But this is an issue that we felt couldn't wait any longer. And so we'd ask for your approval to move forward with that. Mr. Arena is also on the call if there are a higher level of granularity that I'm unable to respond to.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion on the floor? Any questions? Member Rousseau. Mr. McLaughlin, if you could turn Member Rousseau's microphone on, please.
Thank you. I'm glad we're having this conversation on the right side of the potential catastrophe here. I do, and I realize we don't have a lot of runway to do long-term planning considering the state we're in. I'm just looking at some of this and thinking, are other school districts going to the cloud for a lot of this stuff, and we're buying servers, and in 2033, we can come back and talk about these old servers that are going to fail on us again? Or is part of this, get us over the hump so that we can at least be sure that tomorrow morning or whenever we will still have a network? And when there's some space, is somebody tasked with eventually coming up with a longer term plan so that we aren't just rinsing and repeating this problem every 10 years?
Yeah, I would say two things to that, Mr. So, and if Mr. Arena wants to add on to my comments, I would invite him to do so. One, this repair project will expand our archival capacity by 300%. And I think it's sort of a consequence of having waited this long, that there'll be a much more optimal set of infrastructure that would be put into place. My understanding that there is a large cloud-based component of this project as well, although I would defer to Mr. Arena on the specifics of that. And then I think with regard to the long-term planning, I guess I would say two things. One, we've identified as part of the strategic plan the need to further articulate, itemize, and prioritize all of the capital repair projects, so that it's something that will be revisited by the school committee and the administration on an annual basis. I think that's one key component to making sure that we're not experiencing the same set of challenges over and over and over again. We have had conversations with Tufts University and other potential partners about developing more longer-term strategic planning with respect to infrastructure. I think those conversations need to continue, and they also have to be, I think, put into the context of some of the broader infrastructure challenges that this community will have to confront in the coming years with regard to certain facilities.
Thank you. Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion for approval by member Rousseau, seconded by member Van der Kloot. All those in favor, or do we need a roll call vote?
Member Prince. Yes. Member McLaughlin, yes. Member Stone. Member Rousseau.
Yes.
Van der Kloot.
Yes.
Mayor Longo Kern.
Yes, 7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. The paper is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 9, Human Capital Report. Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations will present on appointments and staffing changes in staffing in response to requests for regular updates on personnel changes. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the committee have asked over the course of the last year for us to implement some type of reporting with respect to our personnel changes and fluctuations. This is a very early draft of that type of report, and something that we wanted to get in front of you to get your feedback, so that as we institute this as a monthly process, we're keeping the committee updated. We're bringing to you the information that you find relevant and that you'd like to know about. So there's basically 5 components of this. I will say, I'll preface this that first, there's only 2 slides to this. So if you're concerned about how long this presentation is about to go, I can put your mind at ease. There's 5 components to this. This is the personnel report, the human capital report. To begin the school year will always be potentially the most complicated and lengthy, because we're just frankly trying to obtain what information the committee would find relevant. I did not dive deeply into this, and so this is fairly complicated and very fluid information that would be in any human capital report, especially the one at the beginning of the school year. So I would essentially take all of the numbers you're about to see with some degree of a grain of salt. Some of the variables that will be obvious in a second, if we go to the next slide, is that our appointments at a very technical level include appointments to summer work that essentially lasts 2 months, and then the position goes away for the next 9.5 months. So that's really not an accurate reflection of the overall composition of our staffing. But as we pull data, that's the type of information that we have to see. So once we know that this is in fact the components of the report that the committee would like to see, we'll spend more time making sure that it's parsed out, and that we're actually able to give you information that you can draw accurate conclusions from. But essentially, this is what we'd be looking at, is discussing with you the new appointments, individuals that are coming into the organization for the first time. Promotions, I think, is important to because it's an organizational value of ours that we want to identify the internal talent and give greater responsibility to those individuals when it's appropriate. They've got the institutional knowledge to demonstrate commitment to the district. Ms. Hines, certainly an example of that with her promotion to the Director of Health Services position. Retirements are something that we typically cover at the end of the year. Even that, there's some complexity because when we look at the composition of our retirements, we're looking at folks who retired in the previous fiscal year, but the position had not yet been filled. Folks that have retired along sort of the traditional educator cycle that leave typically on June 30th. And then some individuals who have identified their retirement date in the current fiscal year, but have not actually retired yet. But it's an important information to know because we're doing succession planning and things of that nature. And then on the next page, the current postings, again, this is a really brief summary because that information really does change. And some of the numbers that we had on Friday as we were preparing this report are not even the numbers that we would have today. Again, particularly at the beginning of the school year, you're going to see a lot of fluidity there. And so I think later in the school year, it'll be easier to capture that information and convey it to you. This is not the time to be providing accurate information because it's just changing so rapidly. Coming into this fiscal year, and this is a conversation that we had a little bit during the budget process. We've looked at the structure of the business office and how positions may evolve or change over time. And so right now we are looking at establishing a coordinator of human resources position to help leverage the organization's priorities toward some of the strategic staffing, recruitment, cultivation of diversity, and things of that nature. So this is the general framing of how I would anticipate the report going. Again, I would take the numbers and the specifics for this evening with a grain of salt. But if there's other information that you think you would like to see in this report, I'd ask that we don't even necessarily need to discuss it now, but if you could send that to my attention, we can try to incorporate it into subsequent reports. I will say, this is the last point that I'll make, some of this information is obviously very sensitive and similar to some health data. There's some information that if the committee is interested, we certainly want to provide as much information as possible, but some of it might be more appropriate in individual conversations than discussion in a public forum. That's not the case certainly for the structure of the organization, how we're spending the money, things like that. But there are some personnel matters that would not be appropriate to be included in this type of report.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you.
Member Vanderklut?
Oh, looks great.
That's not just because it was short, right?
It was a great presentation.
I thought it would go
No,
well in
I
that
think
sense.
the information makes sense to me and yeah, appropriate.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Presentations of the public not to begin before 7 PM, so we're
Oh,
good.
Okay.
Regular meetings of the school committee includes this presentations of the public agenda item to give any resident the opportunity to place a presentation before the school committee. A resident may only present once at any meeting. These presentations are an opportunity for the public to make a presentation to the committee, but are not opportunities for dialogue with the committee. If one or more members of the committee wishes to have a conversation about the topic presented, a member may request that the item be added to a subsequent regular meeting. The details for submitting a presentation can be found within the policy BEDH, public comment and presentations of the public. None. Public comment pursuant. Do we have any more emails, Member
Yes.
Vanderklut?
We do have an email. Shall I read it?
Okay, that comes in a minute. Public comment pursuant to policy BEDH, public comment and presentations of the public. Any resident in the audience may be given permission to speak once on any item on the agenda for up to 3 minutes. The speaker is expected to keep their comments to the item on the agenda. The speaker must begin their comments providing their full name and full Medford street address where they reside. Residents may also submit their comments by writing to the superintendent of schools prior to the meeting or by emailing medfordsc@medford.k12.ma.us prior to or during the item on the agenda. Written comments must be kept to a length that allows for them to be read into the record in less than 3 minutes, or the comments will be summarized by the secretary of the school committee. A welcoming inclusion community is both a value of the school committee and an aspirational goal. We ask for your help in achieving this goal and value your perspective. When writing or emailing, please provide this required information, your name and number, the number and name of the item on the agenda, your first and last name, your Medford street address, where you reside, your question or comment. Member Vanderklut.
Yes, this letter is from Cheryl Rodriguez of 281 Park Street. She writes, "Hello, I'm writing concerned about the lack of a permanent crossing guard at the intersection of Riverside Ave and Freedom Way. There are 3 schools that utilize that crosswalk, the McGlynn Elementary and Middle School and the Andrews Middle School. I am grateful that the Medford Police cross children there when they can, but understandably, they need to leave it if there is a call, leaving no one to cross our children. This is even more urgent as bus 11, formerly dropped off at Spring Street and Central Ave, was canceled for the middle school, and those children now have to walk without benefit of a crossing guard on that very busy street. Bus 11 was created because there were so many children on bus 2 that they could not accommodate them all. I am unsure of how many children lost bus service with this move, likely inspired by the driver shortages, but the families received no notice and have added to the number of children, likely unaccompanied, that are crossing at this spot. Please prioritize getting a crossing guard to this location immediately. Thank you, Cheryl Rodriguez.
Thank you, Member Van de Kloot. I do know I signed for 2 temporary crossing guards to become permanent, but that still puts us at a few that we need to hire for. So we're working actively, and I thank our police department for helping out whenever they can. And I'll make sure I ask that they cover any spots that are not filled right now. Continue to do that. Yes. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. We have continued business approval of the revised 2021-2022 school year calendar.
What's changed? Mayor,
Member Rousseau?
I'm unclear what is revised.
Extra day we have in our calendar. An extra day that we could, because we needed the 180.
The March 23rd half day coincided with statewide assessment, so we outside the assessment window. And
Can people hear you on the Zoom? Because I don't think the people watching can, sorry, I'm not going to remember all that. Thank you, Dr. Cushing. Get your steps in.
absolutely. The schedule this year added the 2 holidays, and that caused an inadvertent 181st day in our calculations. We also had March 23rd, if I remember correctly, as a middle school, high school half-day early release. That conflicted with the high school administration of the statewide assessment, MCAS. So those 2 errors and changes, however you want to look at it, needed to be rectified. So we wanted to make sure that you had it before you. So moving it March 23rd to March 30th and removing the extra day, which now puts us squarely at 180 days that have been hand counted and quadruple verified.
Thank you. So the calendar before, if I may, sorry, Mayor.
Member Rousseau.
Thank you. So the calendar that we have on the website at the moment has us actually going 1 day later than we will be going.
Correct.
I just worry about parents that bought their tickets to hop on a plane the morning after, which, I mean, that's not me, but I know some people are really planners like that. So that's great. So if they.
That will be, that calendar will be removed once this one is approved.
Great.
And unless there are any snow days, we will now, at present, we end on the Friday.
Great. Thank you.
Motion to approve by Member Graham, seconded by Member McLaughlin. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Calendar is approved. Number 7, new business. Number 8, reports requested. Number 9, condolences. And number 10, our next meeting will be Monday, October 4th, 2021, which will be a regular school committee meeting here in the Alden Memorial Chambers and also be on Zoom.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Member Rousseau, seconded by everybody. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?